The crowd was roaring, the lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium blinding, and every camera lens in the world pointed at one patch of court. But beneath the thunder of applause and gasps, something darker was brewing. It wasn't just about tennis anymore. It was about pride, respect, and survival in the heat of battle. In the middle of that chaos, Coco Gauff, eyes narrowed with a fire rarely seen in her young career, leaned ever so slightly toward Aryna Sabalenka. Her words, low enough to be caught only by nearby microphones, cut sharper than any forehand. "Next time, I won't stay quiet." The sentence was short, but the impact, earthquake level. The stadium froze. Commentators stumbled over their words. Fans worldwide clipped the moment and replayed it again and again. In a sport often built on politeness, etiquette, and quiet, please, here was a declaration of the war. But how did it get to this? Why would the 19-year-old star of American tennis, usually known for her composure and elegance, unleash a line that sounded more like it belonged in a boxing ring than on a tennis court? To answer that, we need to look beyond the scoreline, beyond the rallies, and into the invisible game that had been simmering for years. This was the U.S. Open semifinal, the biggest stage in tennis outside a Grand Slam final. For Coco, it was about proving that she wasn't just America's sweetheart. She was a champion in the making, ready to inherit the throne once held by Serena Williams. For Aryna Sabalenka, the Belarusian powerhouse, it was about dominance, intimidation, and sending a message to the entire tour. I am the most feared player here. Their styles could not have been more different. Coco, graceful, measured, the master of defense turned into counterattack. Sabalenka, brute strength, explosive serves, ground strokes hit as if they might break the ball in half. One represented calm, the other chaos. And when those two worlds collided, there was no middle ground. Every rally carried extra meaning. Every fist pump from Sabalenka felt like a provocation. Every long pause by Coco before serving was interpreted as a subtle challenge. This wasn't just a match, it was a silent conversation, in gestures, looks, and body language. As the match unfolded, tension dripped like sweat. Coco, feeding off the crowd, tried to stay calm, but each roar from Sabalenka grew louder, more primal, aimed almost directly at her. Sabalenka's energy was raw, almost feral. Coco's was tightly bottled, until the bottle cracked. That moment, the whispered warning, was more than a reaction. It was years in the making. Seeds had been planted in their earlier encounters, where tiny flashes of disdain, an eye roll here, a mocking laugh there, hinted at something deeper. What the world saw on that September night was simply the explosion of a rivalry that had been slowly cooking under pressure. And once Coco let those words slip, there was no turning back. For the first time, the young American had openly confronted the beast across the net. And for the first time, Sabalenka smirked, as though she had achieved exactly what she wanted. She had drawn fire out of someone who usually kept it hidden. The air inside Arthur Ashe wasn't just tense. It was combustible. And everyone watching knew it. We were witnessing the birth of something unforgettable. But what exactly were the sparks that ignited this storm? How did small slights and gestures turn into one of the most shocking confrontations women's tennis has ever seen? Long before the bright lights of Arthur Ashe Stadium, the seeds of this storm had already been sown. Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka weren't strangers. They had crossed paths before, and each encounter left behind small scars, quiet signs of a rivalry waiting to erupt. For Coco, her rise had been nothing short of a fairy tale. At just 15, she stunned Venus Williams at Wimbledon and carried the hopes of a new generation on her shoulders. She was graceful, articulate, and mature beyond her years. The media adored her, fans celebrated her poise, and she became the future of American tennis. But with adoration comes expectation. And with expectation comes pressure. Sabalenka was the opposite. A late bloomer by comparison, Aryna fought her way into the spotlight through sheer force of will. Nicknamed the Tiger by some, she was unapologetic about her game, hit hard, hit often, and intimidate opponents until they crumbled. She didn't care about polish, she cared about victory. Where Coco was celebrated for elegance, Aryna was feared for ferocity. And yet, it wasn't just their playing styles that clashed. It was their personalities. Coco's long pre-serve routines, carefully measured and deliberate, irritated Sabalenka. In one past match, cameras caught Aryna rolling her eyes and mocking the ritual under her breath. Coco, usually stone-faced, showed her own irritation in subtle ways. In another encounter, after one of Aryna's trademark screams pierced the air following a winner, Coco was seen rolling her eyes dramatically, almost as if saying, is that really necessary? Those moments may have seemed trivial to casual viewers, but to players under constant pressure, they were fuel. Each side carried the memory forward, adding more wood to the fire. By the time they met again on the US Open stage, those memories had already transformed the air between them. The match didn't begin at 0-0. It began with years of unspoken tension. From the very first games of the semifinal, the undertone was visible. Sabalenka's fist pumps weren't just celebrations. They were aimed like arrows across the net. Every roar, every glare was calculated to send a message. I own this court. Coco, in turn, countered with calm defiance. She stared back, unflinching, and walked slowly, deliberately back to the baseline. A silent act of resistance. The rallies became longer, the errors costlier. Sabalenka's frustration boiled over when a line call didn't go her way. She paced near the umpire, waving her arms, her voice sharp. Coco stood quietly, waiting, her posture an unspoken rebuke. The crowd sensed it. Something was building. It was no longer just tennis. It was a test of patience, of nerves, of identity. Coco's strategy was simple. Let Sabalenka burn herself out. Aryna's was equally clear. Rattle Coco until the calm exterior cracked. Each gesture mattered. Aryna's towel grabs were aggressive. Coco's water breaks were slow and deliberate. A glare, a mutter, a scoff. Every tiny action was a spark against dry kindling. The stadium began to lean forward, not just for the shots, but for the drama between them. And then, midway through the match, Coco finally let out a rare shout after forcing an error. It was uncharacteristic, raw, and loud. Sabalenka froze, glaring across the net with disbelief. That moment was different. The calm star had bared her teeth. The invisible battle had become visible. What had once been whispers of rivalry was now a fire, and everyone watching knew it was only a matter of time before it burst into flames. It was deep in the deciding set, the kind of stage where champions are made and legacies are broken. The scoreboard was locked tight, every rally like a tug of war, pulling the momentum one way, then the other. Sabalenka, veins pulsing, unleashed a forehand, so vicious it echoed around Arthur Ashe like a gunshot. The ball zipped past Coco, and Sabalenka erupted with a scream, primal, wild, and aimed directly at her opponent. She didn't just scream. She pumped her fist in Coco's direction, her body language dripping with defiance. For a split second, the crowd gasped. This wasn't celebration. It was a challenge. Coco paused at the baseline. She inhaled, exhaled, then her eyes narrowed. She didn't move straight to the next point. Instead, she walked deliberately, slowly, almost like she was rehearsing her thoughts. When they crossed paths at the changeover, the dam broke. Coco leaned in, her voice firm but steady, a line delivered like a dagger. Next time, I won't stay quiet. The stadium froze. Tens of thousands of people, usually restless between games, held their breath as if watching two fighters squaring up in a boxing ring. Sabalenka's lips curled into a smirk, and without hesitation, she fired back, "Try me!" It was a moment that felt unscripted, raw, and dangerously human. Not forehands, not serves, not backhands. Words, threats, emotion. The umpire tried to restore order, calling for quiet, her voice almost drowned in the electric air. But the damage was done. The match had transformed into something bigger than sport. Every shot after that exchange carried venom. Coco sprinted for balls with fury, her strokes sharper, her footwork faster. Sabalenka hammered each return as if determined to silence not just her opponent, but her words. Inside the crowd, reactions fractured. Some booed, offended at what they saw as a breakdown of tennis etiquette. Others cheered, exhilarated at witnessing the rawest kind of rivalry. Most just stared, wide-eyed, realizing they were present for a piece of tennis history. Outside the stadium, the internet caught fire. Within minutes, clips circulated on Twitter, slowed down, lip-read, dissected frame by frame. Hashtags like "Shaker next time," "I won't stay quiet," and "Gauff this is Sabalenka" began trending worldwide. Memes flooded in. Coco's glare next to Sabalenka's smirk. GIFs comparing them to prize fighters. Captions reading, "This isn't tennis, this is war." Sports media went into a frenzy. Headlines screamed, "Gauff threatens Sabalenka, shock at US Open." Analysts debated endlessly. Was this a disgrace to sportsmanship, or simply the honest heat of competition? Commentators replayed the clip from every angle, discussing whether Coco had crossed a line, or whether Sabalenka had pushed her there. And then came the press conferences. Coco entered first. Calm, collected, but firm. She refused to apologize, framing her words not as aggression, but as self-defense. "I'm not someone who looks for drama," she told reporters, "but I won't allow myself to be disrespected." Her tone wasn't angry. It was resolute. Minutes later, Sabalenka appeared, unapologetic and even playful. "That's tennis," she shrugged. "Emotions run high. If she can't handle it, that's on her." When asked if she had tried to intimidate Coco, she smiled, her voice dripping with mystery. "Maybe, maybe not." Two statements, two perspectives. One rivalry, now undeniable. Fans chose sides instantly. Team Coco praised her for standing her ground. Team Sabalenka admired her fearless fire. Neutral viewers didn't care about sides. They simply recognized drama that the sport hadn't seen in years. And yet, everyone knew this was only the beginning. Long after the last ball was struck and the stadium lights dimmed, the echoes of that semifinal still reverberated across the tennis world. This was no ordinary match, no fleeting clash of temperaments. What happened between Coco Gauff and Aryna Sabalenka that night marked the birth of a rivalry destined to shape the WTA for years to come. For Coco, the moment was transformative. Until then, she had been painted as the poised prodigy, America's next star, admired for her composure as much as her talent. But standing her ground against Sabalenka revealed another side. The fighter within, the competitor unafraid to push back. Fans who once saw her as the sweet face of tennis now recognized her as something more powerful, a young woman unwilling to be intimidated. That one line, "Next time I won't stay quiet," became not just a statement but a symbol of defiance. For Sabalenka, the confrontation only reinforced her brand, fearless, unapologetic, and larger than life. She thrived on chaos, thrived on pushing opponents to the edge, and in Coco's reaction, she found proof that her presence could rattle even the most disciplined stars. To her supporters, she was the warrior tennis desperately needed, a player unafraid of being the bad girl, if it meant winning battles both physical and psychological. Together they created something the sport had been missing. Since the twilight of Serena Williams, women's tennis has searched for rivalries that capture headlines beyond the scoreboards. And now, here it was, a clash of opposites, fire versus ice, strength versus composure, Coco versus Aryna. The ripple effects were immediate. Every handshake at the net between them was scrutinized. Every quote in post-match interviews was analyzed for hidden tension. Sports psychologists weighed in, pointing out how Coco's usually reserved personality cracked under pressure while Sabalenka fed on confrontation like oxygen. Media outlets didn't just cover their matches. They built narratives, casting them as characters in an unfolding drama. And the fans, they chose sides. Team Coco praised her dignity and resilience. Team Aryna celebrated her fearless edge. Some fans embraced both, simply grateful to see women's tennis infused with a spark of rivalry strong enough to trend worldwide. But beyond the headlines and hashtags, this story raised deeper questions. Where's the line between passion and provocation? Between standing up for yourself and breaking the unwritten rules of sportsmanship? Tennis has long thrived on civility, yet its most unforgettable moments, McEnroe's outbursts, Serena's fire, Connor's defiance, often came from players daring to step outside the script. Coco's words and Aryna's smirk reminded us that greatness isn't always polite. Sometimes it's raw. What is certain is that every future meeting between these two will carry an electric charge. Their rivalry isn't just about trophies, it's about control, identity, and who owns the mental battlefield. And that makes it unmissable. So now the question turns to you. Was Coco right to finally break her silence and stand up for herself? Or did she cross a line that should never be crossed in the spirit of sportsmanship? One thing is undeniable. This rivalry has only just begun. If you love these deep dives into the untold dramas of sport, make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next chapter of Coco versus Sabalenka. And let me know in the comments, whose side are you on? Team Coco or Team Aryna?